Hello, it's me again, Skelly. Welcome to Series 1 Part 4. Don't worry, sorry to be a bore, but I'm doing this video in parts as the whole video would be up to 7 hours long and poor old PowerPoint can't handle the saving of a very large video. Please be patient and just read the sections that interest you the most. It's possible to advance through each slide by dragging the slider bar slowly along the progress bar situated at the bottom of your screen. Some sections of the very long document will be left out due to long columns and databases, so please be patient. Increases to 5th schedule. 26bb, where any benefit is expressed to be payable by reference to an amount specified in column 2, and any subsequent column of the 5th schedule to either the rules as they had effect immediately after the 5th of April, 1975, or to the rules as from time to time amended. Such benefit shall be increased in each year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 26 of the rules as they had effect immediately after the 5th of April, 1975, and as from time to time amended, and the increased amounts shall be entered in a subsequent column of that schedule. Increases to 7th schedule. 26c, the amounts specified in column 2, and any subsequent column of the 7th schedule shall be increased with effect from the 1st of January in each year commencing in 1991 by the percentage referred to in paragraph 3 of Rule 26b, and the increased amounts shall be entered in a subsequent column of that schedule. Preservation of benefit. 27.1. This rule is incorporated into the rules in order to ensure compliance by the scheme and the rules with Section 63 of and Schedule 16 to the Social Security Act 1973 and regulations made under or in connection therewith. 2. This rule shall override any other provisions of the scheme or the rules which are inconsistent with it, including any which would otherwise have the effect of overriding this rule, provided that a. If at any time or for any period benefit in the form of one or more pensions is payable to any person, in this subparagraph called a beneficiary, under the provisions of any other rule or rules, other than Rule 9 am, and benefit in the form of a pension would but for the provisions of this paragraph also be payable to that beneficiary under the provisions of this rule by reference to the same member or other person, and or alternatively. 2. If by virtue of any event or circumstances benefit in the form of one or more lump sums is payable to any person, in this subparagraph also called a beneficiary, under the provisions of any other rule or rules, and benefit in the form of a lump sum would but for the provisions of this paragraph also be payable to that beneficiary under the provisions of this rule by reference to the same member or other person. Benefits shall be or continue to be payable to that beneficiary under such other rule or rules in lieu of being payable under this rule, but in either case any such pensions or lump sums shall, if and insofar as is necessary, be increased to the amount of the benefit in the same form which would but for this paragraph have been payable to him under this rule, and if more than one pension or lump sum is so increased, each such pension or lump sum shall be increased by the proportion of the total increase which the amount prior to any increase under this paragraph of that pension or lump sum bears to the aggregate amount prior to any increase under this paragraph of the pensions or lump sums so increased, and in the case of benefit in the form of one or more lump sums shall be payable to that beneficiary not later than the time when benefit in the form of a lump sum would but for this paragraph have been payable to him under this rule. b. Nothing in this rule shall prevent benefits being paid to any person in circumstances in which benefit is not payable under this rule. c. Nothing in this rule shall be deemed to authorize or require the payment of any benefit contravening or exceeding the inland revenue limits. 3. For the purposes of this rule, a. Long service benefit means the benefits to which any of a member, and his widow, dependents and estate or personal representatives by reference to him, will be entitled under the rules if he remains in eligible employment until attaining pensionable age. b. Preservation service in relation to any person means the aggregate of the following periods, namely: I. Any periods, whether or not continuous, of service in eligible employment, and 2. For the purposes of subparagraph E. 2. Of this paragraph and paragraph 4 of this rule, any periods of service whilst such person was a member of another occupational pension scheme relating to the same or any other employment in respect of which additional rights to long service benefit are granted under the rules in substitution for accrued rights under such other occupational pension scheme. Provided that no account shall be taken of any period which does not qualify such person for long service benefit, and provided also that no period shall be reckoned twice. C. Short service benefit means the benefits which are awarded but for paragraph 2 of this rule have been payable to or by reference to any person under this rule on or subsequent to termination of his service in eligible employment, otherwise than by reason of death, before he has attained pensionable age, such benefits consisting of or comprising benefits of any description, whether pension or lump sum, and including any option contained in the rules to substitute the one for the other in whole or in part, which would have been payable to or in respect of him or available to him as long service benefit. D. Supplementary credits has the meaning assigned thereto by paragraph 5 of Schedule 16 to the Social Security Act 1973 and any regulations made under that act, and e. A person's period of service in eligible employment shall be deemed not to have terminated if his service in eligible employment has ceased, but I. He subsequently re-enters eligible employment within the period of not more than 1 month referred to in subparagraph A of paragraph 2 of Rule 2, or pursuant to the exercise of a right to return to work under Section 48(1) of the Employment Protection Act 1975, or 2. Having completed or been credited with 2 years preservation service, he subsequently re-enters eligible employment. 4. Subject to the provisions of paragraph 2 of this rule, a person, in this rule called a person entitled to short service benefit, whose service in eligible employment terminates, otherwise than by reason of death, on or after the 6th of April 1975 before he has attained pensionable age, shall be entitled to have short service benefit paid to and by reference to him if at the date of such termination he has completed or been credited with 2 years preservation service. 5. Subject to the provisions of paragraph 7 of this rule, short service benefit shall be payable in the same manner as long service benefit on attainment by the person entitled to short service benefit of pensionable age, or, as the case may require, on his subsequent death or within such time after such death as long service benefit would be payable. 6. A. Subject as hereinafter provided and subject to the provisions of paragraph 7 of this rule, short service benefit shall be computed on the same basis as long service benefit. B. In the case of so much of any long service benefit as I. accrues at a higher rate or otherwise more favorably in the case of persons with a period of preservation service of some specified minimum length, or of persons remaining in preservation service up to some specified minimum age, or 2. Is of an amount or at a rate unrelated to the length of person's preservation service or the amount of contributions payable by, for, or in respect of the person entitled to such benefit. The corresponding short service benefit shall be calculated on the basis of uniform accrual, bearing the same proportion to long service benefit at the time when the service in eligible employment of the person entitled to short service benefit terminates as the period of preservation service completed by that person bears to the period of preservation service which would have been completed by him had he remained in eligible employment until he attained pensionable age. C. I. Short service benefit payable in respect of supplementary credits shall be calculated in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 7 of this rule, and not in accordance with the provisions of subparagraph B of this paragraph, if and insofar as the effect of the method of calculation prescribed in the said paragraph 7 is inconsistent with the effect of the provisions of the said subparagraph B. 2. In the calculation of any period of preservation service which was or would have been completed by a person for the purposes of subparagraph B above, there shall, notwithstanding any other provision of the rules, be taken into account only his actual period or periods of service in eligible employment. 3. The short service benefit payable to and by reference to any person shall if and where necessary be increased so that its value will to the reasonable satisfaction of the Committee of Management exceed or compare reasonably with the amount of contributions paid by that person, including contributions paid by way of deduction from earnings or otherwise, and not refunded in any form. 7a. Subject as hereinafter provided. Short service benefit shall include all supplementary credits to which a person would be entitled as long service benefit, including any supplementary credit which I. has been granted, either at the time that person's membership of the scheme commenced or subsequently, in respect of service by him prior to the date of the grant, or 2. is not related to length of his pensionable service or the number or amount of contributions paid by or in respect of him, or 3. represents a transfer of accrued rights from another occupational pension scheme. b. In the case of any supplementary credits for which a person entitled to short service benefit who would have become entitled thereto as long service benefit was to pay a fixed amount, and such fixed amount has not been paid in full at or before the date when his service in eligible employment terminates, the short service benefit payable to and by reference to him in respect of such supplementary credits shall include so much of the amount of the whole of such supplementary credits as bears the same proportion to that amount as the amount which he has paid before his service in eligible employment terminates bears to such fixed amount. c. Subject to subparagraph b. of this paragraph, in the case of I. Any supplementary credits to which a person entitled to short service benefit who would have become entitled thereto as long service benefit was to contribute the whole or part of the cost where such whole or part has not been fully contributed by the time his service in eligible employment terminates, and 2. Any supplementary credit of a description specified in subparagraph a. or b. of this paragraph to which a person entitled to short service benefit who would become entitled thereto as long service benefit has not contributed. Short service benefit payable to or by reference to that person in respect of any such supplementary credit shall include such proportion of the amount of the whole of such supplementary credits as the period of his preservation service since the date on which in the case of such supplementary credits as are referred to in subparagraph c. I. above the contribution to be made by him or the first part thereof became due or in the case of any such supplementary credits as are referred to in sub. Paragraph c. 2, above the benefit was granted bears to the period from such date until he attains or would have attained pensionable age. 8. Increases in pensions shall be added to short service benefit or to any benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2. of this rule in accordance with Rule 26 at the same time and in the same manner as to long service benefit. 9. A person entitled to short service benefit or to have paid to or by reference to him any benefit payable in lieu of short service benefit by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule, may, as an alternative to such entitlement, elect, by notice in writing given to the pensions officer on the termination of his service in eligible employment or at any later time before attaining pensionable age and subject to the agreement of the pensions officer, for payment of a transfer payment to another occupational pension scheme in accordance with the provisions of Rule 28 provided that a transfer payment may be made in respect of him without his consent as an alternative to such entitlement in the circumstances specified in paragraph 1 am, of Rule 28. 10a. Subject as hereinafter provided any provisions of the rules relating to assignment and surrender of benefits, to charge or lien on benefits or the resources of the pension fund, forfeiture and cognate matters shall apply in relation to this rule and to any benefit payable in lieu of short service benefit by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule. b.I. No provision of the rules shall operate so as to deprive a person otherwise entitled to receive short service benefit or benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule of such benefit by reason of failure by that person or any other person to make a claim for or obtain such benefit or any payment due as benefit provided that this subparagraph shall not prevent reliance on any enactment relating to the limitation of accessions and b. where any payment by way of short service benefit or benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule is not claimed within 6 years of the date on which it becomes due, the person who would but for this provision have been entitled to receive such payment shall forfeit that entitlement. 2. No provision of the rules shall operate so as to deprive a person otherwise entitled to receive short service benefit or benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule of such benefit by reason of failure by that person or any other person at any time after the service in eligible employment of the person entitled to short service benefit terminates to give any notice or comply with any formality required by the scheme as a condition of entitlement. 11. On the winding up of the scheme, members then in eligible employment and under pensionable age shall be entitled to short service benefit as if their service in eligible employment had then terminated, and the provisions of Clause 40 and insofar as it has effect Clause 40 of the scheme shall apply provided that a. Any short service benefit and any benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule in course of payment shall be subject to the same degree of priority as any long service benefit in course of payment, and b. Transfer payments may be made in relation to short service benefit or benefit payable in lieu thereof by virtue of paragraph 2 of this rule to one or more occupational pension schemes without the consent of the persons in respect of whom such transfer payments are made in the circumstances specified in paragraph 1 am. Of Rule 28 or provided that the occupational pension scheme to which a transfer payment is made in respect of any such person relates to the same employment or to employment with the same employer, or his successors, as the employment of such person at the date of such winding up. 12. On the death of a person entitled to short service benefit before such benefit becomes payable, benefits shall be payable if and insofar as is provided by the foregoing provisions of the rules. 13. A person who is not entitled to short service benefit under paragraph 5 of this rule on termination of service in eligible employment on or after the 6th of April 1975 shall be entitled to benefits if and insofar as is provided by the foregoing provisions of the rules. 14. Any pension becoming payable under Rule 11, 12, 13, 14 or 14 or before pensionable age shall, if it is equal to or larger than that which would be required to constitute short service benefit, be not less than the actuarial equivalent of the pension which would have been payable by virtue of paragraphs 1 and 2 of Schedule 1 AM to the Pensions Act from pensionable age. 4. Transfers. Transfer payments. 28.1. Where a person's service in eligible employment terminates otherwise than by reason of his death, whether before, on or after the 6th of April 1975, the pensions officer may in his discretion, and, subject to the provisions of subparagraph b of paragraph 11 of Rule 27 and as hereinafter provided, if that person so elects in writing, authorize the making under this rule on terms approved by the actuary of a transfer payment in respect of that person from the scheme to another occupational pension scheme which consents to accept such payment on those terms. A. If that other occupational pension scheme is either I. Approved as an exempt approved scheme under Chapter I of Part 14 of the Income and Corporation Taxes Act 1988, or 2. Otherwise approved for the purposes of this paragraph by the Commissioners of the Inland Revenue, and b. Where the service in eligible employment of that member or other person terminates on or after the 6th of April 1978, if his employment under that other scheme is contracted out employment by reference to that scheme, within the meaning of the Pensions Act, or that scheme is subject to Section 49 of the Pensions Act, or the transfer payment is made to that scheme in the circumstances referred to in Regulation 2(3) of the Contracting Out, Transfer, Regulations 1985 and the Occupational Pensions Board, whether or not subject to conditions, approve the arrangements made for the transfer. C. For the avoidance of doubt for the purposes of any determination after the guarantee date of a transfer payment under this rule, The benefits of a member by reference to which the transfer payment under this rule is calculated shall not include bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations. 1am, where a member's or other person's service in eligible employment terminates otherwise than by reason of his death on or after the 6th of April, 1978, but he continues in employment with the same employer, within the meaning of Section 63 of and Part I of Schedule 16 to the Social Security Act 1973 and of the Pensions Act, and becomes a contributor to the staff scheme, a transfer payment may be made in respect of him to the staff scheme under paragraph 1 of this rule, notwithstanding that he does not so elect in writing or otherwise if a. the benefits assured to him under the staff scheme by virtue of that transfer payment are not less in amount than the benefits I. earned by him under the scheme before the 6th of April, 1978, calculated where applicable by reference to his pensionable earnings at the date of such termination, or 2. otherwise accrued to or in respect of him under the scheme before the 6th of April, 1978, and b. the rights allowed to him under the staff scheme by virtue of that transfer payment are in the opinion of the Committee of Management at least equal in value to his accrued rights under the scheme. 2. Where a person enters service in eligible employment, whether before, on or after the 6th of April, 1975, the Pensions Officer may in his discretion authorize before the closure date the acceptance before the closure date under this rule on terms approved by the actuary of a transfer payment in respect of that person, being a member, by the scheme from another occupational pension scheme which consents to make such payment on those terms. 3. Where a transfer payment in respect of a member has been made to a personal pension scheme, as defined in Section 1 of the Pension Schemes Act 1993, such former member may subsequently, if he so wishes, with the consent of the Committee of Management and with effect from the guarantee date, the guarantor, be reinstated as a member of the scheme upon such terms and subject to such payment to the scheme as the Committee of Management, and in relation to payments after the guarantee date, the guarantor may approve on the advice of the actuary. Transfers to IWS-MPS 28.1. A member entitled to benefit on ceasing to be a member paying normal contributions at the transfer date who is admitted to membership of IWS-MPS may at his option in lieu of all entitlements under these rules require the trustee to transfer to the trustee of IWS-MPS such assets in respect of him as correspond to the transferable sum as defined in 3. below. 2. Such a member as is referred to in paragraph 1. above may exercise the right to require the trustee to transfer the transferable sum at any time within 6 months after the transfer date or the date he first becomes a member of IWS-MPS, whichever is later. 3. The transferable sum means the amount corresponding to the value of the member's accrued rights to benefits at the transfer date but excluding bonus augmentations calculated by the actuary in accordance with the provisions of the 8th Schedule. 4. The transfer in accordance with this rule of the transferable sum shall discharge the trustee from any further liability to pay the benefits by reference to which it was made, so that the person who had been entitled to those benefits and, in the case of a member or former member, all persons claiming by reason of his membership shall cease to have any rights under the scheme. 5. Where a transfer of the transferable sum is made pursuant to this rule, benefits shall not be payable under the rules and no bonus augmentations shall be paid. V. Miscellaneous, Administration. General Discretion. 31.1. Subject to paragraph 2 of this rule, TTHE principal employer may in their discretion, after consultation with the Committee of Management, grant special terms to any individual member or person who had become a member within the age and pension limits of the scheme and the rules. Any additional cost shall be paid to the scheme in such manner as the Committee of Management may determine. 2. Without prejudice to any arrangements made under paragraph 1 of this rule before the guarantee date, the power of the principal employer under paragraph 1 may after the guarantee date only be exercised with the prior consent of the guarantor, and with effect from the closure date the paragraph shall cease to have effect. Extension of time limits. 32 Wherein these rules provision is made for anything to be done at a certain time or within a certain period, the Committee of Management may, in relation to any person, in their discretion substitute a later time or extend such period. This rule is not to be interpreted as permitting anything to be done on or after the closure date or the transfer date if the rules specifically provide for it to be done, as the case may be, before the closure date or the transfer date. Payment of benefits. 33.1. Subject as otherwise provided in these rules, any lump sum or refund of contributions payable thereunder to a person or his estate, or to any relative or dependent of a person, shall be paid not later than the expiration of 28 days after the event upon which it becomes payable or upon proof of the entitlement of the person claiming it, whichever occurs the later, provided that if such person may subsequently satisfy the conditions specified in subparagraphs A or B of paragraph 2 of Rule 2, no such lump sum or refund of contributions shall be payable to him until the pensions officer is satisfied that he will not or cannot satisfy any of those conditions. 2a. Subject as hereinafter provided, any pension payable under the rules shall be paid I, with effect from the beginning of the week next following the date of the event creating the entitlement, and 2. At such time as shall be determined by the principal employer, before the guarantee date, or the Committee of Management, on and after the guarantee date, not being more than 13 weeks after end of the week to which it relates. Provided that for the purposes of determining the amount of any pension which would have been payable to any member had he retired on the day before the date of his death, whether or not under any specified conditions or in any specified circumstances, the first payment of such pension shall be deemed to become payable on the date of such deemed retirement. b. Where for any reason beyond the control of the principal employer, before the guarantee date, or the Committee of Management, on and after the guarantee date, any payment of pension cannot be made at the time agreed in pursuance of the preceding subparagraph, it shall be made as soon as reasonably practicable thereafter. 3. Where any person who is entitled to a pension under the rules becomes entitled to such pension at a changed rate, such pension shall be paid at that changed rate with effect from the beginning of the week next following the date of the event causing the change, or if before the beginning of such week such pension has been paid in respect of one or more weeks subsequent to the event causing the change, with effect from the beginning of the week next following the last week in respect of which such pension has been so paid. 4. On the death of any person who is entitled to a pension under the rules, or the occurrence of any other event whereby he ceases to be entitled to such pension. A. No sums shall, by reason of the occurrence of that death or other event, be repayable in respect of any payment of such pension already made. B. If, apart from the occurrence of that death or other event, a payment of pension would have been due or deemed to be payable on the date of that death or other event, such payment shall be made or deemed to be payable as if that death or other event had not occurred. C. If, apart from the occurrence of that death or other event, a payment of pension for any period including the date of that death or other event would not have been due until after that date, there shall be paid as soon as reasonably practicable a sum equal to such part of that payment as would have been attributable to the part of that period ending with the date of that death or other event, and for the purposes of this paragraph pension shall be deemed to accrue from day to day. 5. Where any person, in this paragraph called the deceased, who is entitled to a pension under the rules dies and some other person thereupon becomes entitled to a pension by reference to the deceased, the pension payable to that other person shall be paid with effect from the beginning of the week next following the week which includes the last date in respect of which pension is payable to the deceased. 6. Benefits payable under the rules shall be paid at such office of the principal employer or at such other place and in such manner as the principal employer, before the guarantee date, may from time to time determine, and no person shall be disqualified from receiving such benefits by reason of being absent from the United Kingdom. After the guarantee date, benefits shall be payable at such offices or other place or in such manner as the Committee of Management may with the consent of the guarantor from time to time determine. Any payment made through the post or otherwise at the written request of the person entitled thereto will be made at the risk of that person. 7. Where any amount payable by way of benefit under the rules on any day on or after the 6th of April, 1975 would otherwise include a fraction of a new penny, such fraction shall be treated as a whole new penny. 8. Notwithstanding any other provision of the scheme and rules and without prejudice to the operation of the scheme and rules on the payment of pensions and benefits to any person on and after the 1st of January, 1987, any payment of any pension or benefit made prior to that date shall be deemed to have been duly made, notwithstanding that it may have been calculated and paid on the assumption that contributing service included a period of strike absence after February, 1984 and before the 1st of January, 1987. Unclaimed benefits. 34. The right to any benefit payable under the rules, other than any sum expressed to be payable under the rules to the estate of the deceased member or other person, shall be extinguished if payment thereof is not obtained within a period of 12 months from the date on which that sum becomes payable under the rules, unless in any case the Committee of Management in their discretion extend the said period. Persons not resident in the United Kingdom. 36. Any payment of pension to a person resident outside the United Kingdom shall be made in sterling to an account opened with a banker in the United Kingdom, being an account nominated by notice in writing addressed to the pensions officer by the person entitled to such pension, and an acknowledgement by that banker shall be a sufficient discharge to the Committee of Management for any such payment. Medical examinations. 37. Every member shall, when required so to do by the Committee of Management, submit himself for medical examination by the principal employer's medical advisor. Evidence by members, claimants and beneficiaries. 38.1. Every person claiming benefit under the rules shall a. In such circumstances as may be prescribed by the Committee of Management, submit his claim in such form as the Committee of Management shall prescribe or approve, and b. Furnish such evidence in support of his claim, and in particular, but without prejudice to the generality hereof, such evidence of his age as the Committee of Management may require. 2. Every person entitled to any pension under the rules shall a. Give notice in writing to the pensions officer of his place of residence at the time of becoming so entitled. b. Forthwith give notice in writing of any change of his place of residence. c. Furnish from time to time such evidence of his being alive as the Committee of Management may require, and d. Forthwith give notice in writing to the pensions officer of the occurrence of any event affecting his entitlement. 3. Where any person fails to give such evidence as is required by subparagraph c. of paragraph 2 of this rule, the Committee of Management may suspend or terminate the payment of any further benefits to or by reference to him. Benefits not assignable. 39.1. Benefits under the rules shall not be assignable or chargeable and shall cease to be payable to a person, in this rule called the assigner, who would but for this provision be entitled thereto in the event of the bankruptcy of the assigner or upon the execution by him of any assignment for the benefits of his creditors or of any attempts to mortgage, charge or otherwise assign the same to any person, and if any of those events shall occur on or after the 6th of April, 1975, whether or not the benefits referred to in this paragraph have previously become payable, the provisions of paragraph 2 of this rule shall apply. 2. Where the provisions of this paragraph apply, the Committee of Management shall have power in their absolute discretion to pay or apply from the pension fund an amount or amounts, not exceeding in aggregate the amount or amounts of the benefits which would but for paragraph 1 of this rule have become payable to the assigner, for any one or more of the following purposes. a. For the benefit of the assigner. b. If and for so long as the assigner is a party to a marriage, for the maintenance of the other party to such marriage. c. For the maintenance, education or training of any child of the assigner who for the time being has not attained the age of 18 or who, having attained that age, has not ceased to undergo full-time education or training, and d. For the making of reasonable provision for the care or maintenance of any dependent relative of the assigner. 3. Notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph 1 of clause 41 for the purposes of paragraph 2 of this rule. A. Child in relation to the assigner means I. Any legitimate child, stepchild or adopted child of the assigner or of any person, in this paragraph called the assigner's spouse, who is for the time being such a person as is specified in subparagraph B of paragraph 2 of this rule, and 2. Any person who is not for the time being in the care of any person in relation to whom he is a legitimate child, adopted child or stepchild, and who has before attaining the age of 18 been in the care of the assigner for substantial periods. B. Dependent relative in relation to the assigner means a relative, within the meaning of Section 46 of the Finance Act 1975, of the assigner or of the assigner's spouse who is incapacitated by old age or infirmity from maintaining himself, or the mother of the assigner or of the assigner's spouse, if and for so long as such mother is widowed or living apart from her husband or, in consequence of dissolution or annulment of marriage, single woman. Incapacity of beneficiary. 40.1. This rule shall apply where any person entitled to benefit under the rules is, in the opinion of the Committee of Management, having regard to the advice of the principal employer's medical advisor, unable to act, whether because of mental disorder or for any other reason. 2. Where this rule applies, the Committee of Management may in their discretion pay any sum to which that person is entitled under the rules to any other person for the maintenance of such first mentioned person or his dependents, and the receipt of the person to whom any money is so paid shall be a sufficient discharge for the payment of the amount mentioned therein. 3. Where this rule applies, any pension which would otherwise be payable to the first mentioned person by virtue of Rule 9am and is not for the time being paid under paragraph 2 of this rule shall be held by the Committee of Management to be paid by them at their discretion, while that person remains unable to act as specified in paragraph 1 of this rule, in accordance with paragraph 2 of this rule, and subject thereto shall be held by them for that person until he again becomes able to act or, if he dies without so doing, for his estate. Payment of benefits on death. 41.1. The following provisions of this rule shall have effect with respect to the payment, on the death of a member or other person, in this rule called the deceased, entitled to benefit under the rules, of a. Any sums expressed to be payable under the rules to the estate of the deceased, and b. Any sums which accrued due to the deceased under the rules during his lifetime and were unpaid at the time of his death, other than any sums which have ceased to be payable by virtue of Rule 34. 2. Subject as hereinafter provided, any such sum as is referred to in paragraph 1, hereof shall be paid, on production of probate or letters of administration, to the personal representatives of the deceased. 3. Where a. The personal representatives of the deceased do not send a written claim to the pensions officer within 12 months after the date of the death for any such sum as is referred to in paragraph 1, hereof, or b. The total amount of the sums referred to in paragraph 1, hereof does not exceed £5,000 or such higher amount as may be specified for the time being by order under Section 6 of the Administration of Estates, Small Payments, Act 1965. The sums referred to in paragraph 1, hereof, or any part of them, may be paid to or expended for the benefit of any one or more of the relatives or dependents of the deceased, or, if there be no such relatives or dependents, may be retained in the pension fund. 4. Out of the sums referred to in paragraph 1 of this rule, the Committee of Management may pay sums not exceeding a total of the amount specified in Part I of the 4th Schedule in relation to this paragraph to any person or persons who have incurred expense in providing for the funeral of the deceased, provided that no payment shall be made under this paragraph in a case where a payment has been made under paragraph 2 of Rule 21 or under paragraph 5 of Rule 20 of the rules as they had effect immediately before the 6th of April, 1975 to any person or persons by reason of their having incurred such expense as is referred to in this paragraph. 5. subject as hereinbefore provided. The Committee of Management shall have an absolute discretion as to whether, and to whom, to make any payments under paragraphs 3 and 4 of this rule, and the receipt of any person to whom any money is paid in pursuance of either paragraph shall be a sufficient discharge for the payment of the amount mentioned therein. Payment of children's benefits. 42. Benefits expressed to be payable under the rules to or in respect of a child may be paid at the discretion of the Committee of Management to the child in respect of whom they are payable, or to any other person for the benefit of such child, and the receipt of any person to whom such benefits are so paid shall be a sufficient discharge for the payment of such benefits. Income tax. 43. If any liability to income tax shall arise in respect of any benefit falling to be paid to any person under the rules, whether before, on or after the 6th of April, 1975, the Committee of Management may deduct the amount of such income tax, including any interest payable thereon, from such benefit and account for the same to the proper authorities before paying such benefit to the person entitled thereto, or may postpone payment of such benefit until the liability for such tax and any interest payable thereon has been paid or provided for to the satisfaction of the Committee of Management. Calculation of compound interest. 44.1. In calculating compound interest under the rules, any fraction of a year in the period for which such interest is payable shall be deemed to be a year if it is equal to 6 months or more, and shall otherwise be ignored. 2. Whichever shall be applicable of paragraphs 4 and 5 of this rule shall apply where the amount of a refund with compound interest thereon of any contributions, in this rule called refundable contributions, paid or deemed to be paid or payable by or in respect of any person, in this rule called the contributor, falls to be calculated for any purpose under the rules. 4. If and insofar as the contributor's refundable contributions are paid or deemed to be paid or payable by or in respect of the contributor in respect of any period ending on or after the 6th of April 1975. A. The total amount of the contributor's refundable contributions shall be divided by the number of years comprised in such period, such number of years being calculated in accordance with paragraph 1 of this rule, and the amount resulting from such division shall in this paragraph and paragraph 5 of this rule be called a yearly amount, and b. The contributor shall be deemed for the purposes of this rule to have paid one yearly amount on the day 1 year before the end of the period to which the refund relates, a further yearly amount on the day 1 year before the first mentioned day, and so on until all yearly amounts in relation to him have been thus taken into account. 5. Rests for the purpose of calculating interest shall be deemed to occur. A. On days on which any refundable contributions, including any yearly amount, are deemed to have been paid, other than the earliest such day. B. At the end of the period to which the refund relates, and c. If the period for which interest is payable continues after the end of the period to which the refund relates, at yearly intervals after the end of the period to which the refund relates. Scheme and rules to be supplied to members. 45. A copy of the scheme and the rules shall be supplied to every member requiring the same. Provision of information to IWS, MPS. 45. The Committee of Management shall provide the trustee of IWS, MPS with all such information in their possession relating to those members of the scheme in respect of whom the Committee of Management is required by Rule 28 to make a transfer payment to IWS, MPS as may reasonably be requested by the trustee of IWS, MPS. 6. Determination of claims and disputes. Determinations by local committees. 46.1. Subject to Rule 50, every question or dispute which may arise in connection with eligibility for membership of the scheme or any claim to credit or benefit under the rules, whether as regards the administration of the scheme or the interpretation or construction of any provision thereof or of the rules, shall be referred to and determined in the first instance by the appropriate local committee of the person in respect of whom the question or dispute arises, of the member or other person by or in respect of whom the claim is made, or, if the claim is made by reference to a member or other person, of that member or other person. If that local committee are unable to agree on any matter referred to them under this rule, the matter shall be referred to the Committee of Management, whose decision shall be final. 2. References in these rules to local committees shall with effect from the guarantee date be construed as references to such other subcommittee or committees of the Committee of Management as shall be established to undertake the functions of the local committees with effect from the guarantee date. Appeals. 47.1. Every decision made by a local committee on a reference to them under the last preceding rule shall be subject to appeal to the Committee of Management, whose decision shall be final. 2. If the Committee of Management are unable to agree on any matter referred to them under paragraph 1 of this rule or under Rule 46, the matter shall be referred to a single arbitrator, to be appointed by the President for the time being of the Law Society, whose decision shall be final. Determination of medical questions. 48. Any person who is aggrieved by the determination of the principal employer's medical advisor as to any matter as to which under the rules his opinion or certificate is required to be given may require the appropriate local committee to refer the matter to an independent medical consultant appointed or approved by that committee, and thereupon the matter shall be so referred. The determination of such independent medical consultant upon the matter so referred shall be final. Industrial injuries questions. 50. The determination under the provisions of the Industrial Injuries Act or any of the provisions of the Social Security legislation relating to industrial injuries and industrial diseases of any question or dispute in connection with any claim to benefit under that act or that legislation respectively shall be conclusive for the purpose of any related claim to benefit made under or in so far as applicable made by reference to Rule 14, or Rule 16, or made under Rule 16 or Rule 18 of the rules, as they had effect immediately before the 6th of April, 1975. Conclusion and explanation. The narration must end here, as the remainder of the document is mostly columns of figures and databases. It is suggested that you download or read directly online the remainder, and it's goodbye from me, Skelly. See you in Series 2. 1994, number 2577. Coal industry. The Mine Workers Pension Scheme, Modification, Regulations 1994.